I'm in the big leagues, told them don't miss me. Ballin' like Houston, ayy, feeling like Whitney. I need a bag, bruh, send it through quickly. I'm making his dog, like I'm in the big leagues. Told him that I gotta go, dog. I'm riding a road, y'all. I think that I'm back in my bag now. So I need that go, y'all. Got hits when he throwing the fastball. Just too quick for it, peeling off like the whip orange. Seen they effort, this piss poor.
Welcome back to another episode of Another Turnover, the basketball podcast where a basketball fan with zero basketball credibility gives his opinions on what's going on in the NBA. Opinions that nobody asked for. As always, I am your host, Mr. Chris Aaron Murphy, aka Aaron. And ladies and gentlemen, let's just jump right into it. Folks, we are back after a week-long little vacation, little staycation for Thanksgiving. I hope all of you guys had a tremendous Thanksgiving holiday last week. I hope you ate all the food that you don't normally get to eat throughout the year, and then some. I know I had plenty of beans. I had plenty of greens, potatoes, tomatoes, ham, chicken, turkey, you name it. I had all of it. But let's get right into the episode today. So episode 11, man, we're already 11 episodes into this season. Episode 11 is, I just thought about that. It's pretty crazy. But let's start around the association. Let's talk about some of the pieces of news and reports that have come out from the association over the past couple days. So I want to start with one that kind of made me sad. It was a report that came out. Basically, one of the top stories in the NBA just came out. If you're listening to this, it would have been yesterday, Monday. Tom Thibodeau says that Kemba Walker is out of the Knicks rotation. He has been replaced by Alec Burks. So the four-time All-Star Kemba Walker has kind of struggled with New York to start this season. But Coach Tibbs told reporters on Monday that, Kemba Walker is going to be out of the rotation. Alec Burks will remain the team's starting point guard for right now. So this was kind of a tough one to talk about. Kind of sad, Walker's not going to be in the rotation, at least as of right now, while they're trying to figure things out, best decision forward for the team. Coach Tibbs did say that, the move was a tough decision to make, but you are quoting him, but you always have to do what you think is best for the team. Kemba Walker started in 18 of the first 19 games for the season for New York before he was out with the matchup against the Atlanta Hawks this past Saturday. But Alec Burks in his first start scored 23 points, had 7 rebounds, 3 assists, and 2 steals. So he had a pretty solid showing. So kind of a lose-lose situation for Kemba Walker. He comes out of the lineup, and Alec Burks, his replacement in the starting lineup, balls out. So unfortunately, Kemba Walker is averaging a career low in pretty much every single category. I have it pulled up right here. Career low in points, only 11.7 points on 43% shooting, 3.1 assists, and 2.6 rebounds over 24 and a half minutes for his first season with the New York Knicks. So definitely not a great start, unfortunately, for Kemba Walker and the New York Knicks as a whole. They are the 7th seed in the Eastern Conference currently with an 11-9 record. Like I mentioned, this story kind of made me sad. I've always enjoyed Kemba Walker's game. It's, beautiful to watch him, dribble the basketball. He's definitely got, had one of the better handles in the league, I'd say over arguably the past decade probably. But he has had a pretty decent NBA career. I mean, he's, been 4-time All-Star, he's, been to the playoffs a few times, but he's never been that guy. He's been a number one option, but he's never been a realistic number one option. You're like, he's going to lead us, deep into the playoffs. He's never been that guy. He's kind of always been bubble All-Star. Like, I like to say there's tiers of NBA players, if you're, rating 5 stars. Like, you have your 5 stars who are like MVP caliber, your LeBron, your Steph, your KD, those guys. You got your 4 stars who are essentially, pretty much all-stars, perennial all-stars. You've got, multiple guys like that. You got your, who got to throw out there? Your Joel Embiids, your Kawhi Leonards, your guys like that are perennial all-stars. And then you've got, kind of your bubble all-stars, those 3 stars I'd give him. I would put Kemba in between. I wouldn't say he's probably 3.5 star, in the NBA so far. But there was a report last year that he was having some knee issues. He's been having some lingering knee issues. The same one, there was a report, I couldn't find it when I was doing my research for the show, but there was a report that I remember reading about he was dealing with the same knee issues that T-Mac was actually having closer towards the end of his career, unfortunately. So could this be kind of, spelling the end of Kemba Walker's career? I sure hope not. I definitely think he's got some good basketball left. He's not that old, if I'm not mistaken, but with those knee injuries at his size, if he's not able to be as quick or fast off the dribble like he normally is, that's definitely going to hinder his game quite a bit and hinder his productivity. But his arguably Kemba Walker's most memorable basketball career as of this moment so far, is arguably probably still got to be his step back when he was, playing for UConn. They were playing at the Garden, that Big East tournament. That step back he had against, I don't even know who he had it against because that person's irrelevant now. But, not irrelevant, but, irrelevant to the NBA. But that will arguably one of the most memorable, not just plays from the Garden, but one of the most memorable college basketball plays that I personally can remember watching live when I saw him hit that step back and make that shot. Cardiac Kemba. So, wishing the best for Kemba Walker. Hopefully he is able to get back into the starting lineup and put up the production that we are used to seeing him put up over his 4-time All-Star career. So best of luck to you, Kemba Walker. But next piece of news around the association that we got to talk about. We got to talk about Michael Porter Jr. Report has come out that Michael Porter Jr. was scheduled to have back surgery this Wednesday. Surgery will put him out, unfortunately, indefinitely, and it will be on his lower back. So Michael Porter Jr. has had already a severe back injury. If you remember his playing days at Mizzou, he dealt with a pretty significant injury that a lot of people question, would it, stop, or halt his, NBA dreams, his, NBA aspirations? Would he be able to be an effective player with such a severe back injury at a young age? He's only played in 9 games this year. If you remember, like I said, at Mizzou, he only played in 3 games his freshman year at Mizzou because of his back issues. Now, he was widely regarded. I remember him going into Mizzou. They were talking about him being the projected number 1 pick, like serious number 1 pick talks, but he was only able to play 3 games, fell all the way down to 14, where the Denver Nuggets took a chance on him. Missed his entire rookie season. Bounced back in a pretty big way over the past 2 seasons. Last year had 17.5 points in the playoffs. So, for, a second-year guy, some pretty good numbers. But Denver has offered him, like I talked about in a previous episode, Denver has offered him the 5-year, $173 million max rookie extension. So, with that being the case, if I am Denver, I'm definitely nervous. I don't think it's time to necessarily panic just yet, but I am definitely nervous. Like I mentioned before, Michael Porter Jr. is incredibly talented. Based off of his talent and his production from the past couple seasons, he's definitely worth the money in that regard. But that being the case, his injury history is a bit concerning, especially with how young he is. To be so young and to already have severe back issues is very, very concerning. For anyone who's dealt with back issues, I never dealt with any serious, or ailing back issues. But from what I have heard, it can be pretty debilitating. Like, it can basically put you out. If your back is not right, you really can't do a whole lot, let alone, play basketball against some of the world's most elite basketball players that, there is. So the extension kicks in next year. Unfortunately, for Michael Porter Jr., will this back injury, will this kind of stop him from having the career that he has hoped? I really, really hope not. I'm hoping he can bounce back. Obviously, Denver trusts that his injuries will not be career-altering in any way. If they didn't, they probably wouldn't have offered him the $173 million max extension, right? You would think. I was talking to one of my coworkers when, he got that contract, and I'm like, look, Denver doesn't really pick up free agents like that. So I understand why they wanted to. If Michael Porter Jr. was still putting up the numbers, would continue to put up the numbers throughout this season, we don't actually know if he's going to be coming back this season. But if he kept putting up those numbers, somebody was going to offer him a max deal. So Denver was going to have to match it anyway. So I definitely understand, them putting that on the table and Michael Porter Jr. for signing it. So definitely a good move on his part, but I hope that Denver knows what they're doing and these injuries are not going to derail his career. So we shall see. Best of luck to Michael Porter Jr. He's definitely, one of my favorite players to watch, young players, and say less than, younger than 22 or whatever he is. But hopefully he bounces back. But next story we got around the association. Let's talk about the Golden State Warriors. So, report came out on the 28th. You're listening to this on the 30th. So, on the 28th, 2 days ago, that the Warriors have assigned Klay Thompson and James Wiseman to their G League affiliate, the Santa Cruz Warriors. So, we know Klay Thompson's coming off 2 injuries. 2 years ago, it was his ACL that he tore in the finals. Last year, he tore his Achilles. James Wiseman is coming off a meniscus tear that happened earlier this year in April of 2021. Now, he is going to still continue his rehab. They both will, continue their rehab workouts. But Klay will be doing 5-on-5 in-game, scrimmages, practices, and playing for the G League affiliate for the time being. He's been cleared for full contact for a couple weeks now. Things have been going well. Wiseman, like I mentioned, not yet scrimmaging, still doing his rehab, has not been, cleared for full contact as of yet. But it's just crazy how Klay Thompson specifically has not played since June of 2019. There have been so many changes. I feel like the league is darn near entirely different now. There have been so many changes with the NBA since Klay last played. Just a few players to name. Kawhi Leonard was playing for the Raptors. He's playing against the Warriors in that finals. He is now on the Clippers. Anthony Davis was still in New Orleans, and now he's with the Lakers. DeMar DeRozan was with San Antonio. Now he is with Chicago Bulls. Russell Westbrook is, he was with Oklahoma City at the time of the injury and before he went to Houston, and now in Los Angeles Lakers. Other players, you got Lonzo Ball, he used to play for the New Orleans Pelicans at the time. He is now with the Chicago Bulls as well as DeMar DeRozan. So pretty crazy how much the league and the landscape has changed, but the Warriors are thriving without both of those guys. Those are 2 starters that they're missing, which is crazy to think. If you look at their record, they are 18-2. 18-2 without Klay Thompson, their second best player, and James Wiseman, their young prospect who they took with the second overall pick a couple of years ago. But I would not be shocked at all, based off what I have seen so far, if Klay comes back at I mentioned before, at 80%. Let's say Klay Thompson is 80% of what he used to be, and James Wiseman can kind of get integrated, and, we were expecting him to, an ascension from James Wiseman because he was the second pick for a reason. I would not be shocked if they made it back to the finals. I would take this Warriors team, and I'm not picking them. They're not my finals pick. I have my early season predictions out there, and I got to stick to it so far, so we're looking good. But it's a story for another day. But I would not be shocked if they got back to the finals. I think this Warriors team can match up with basically anybody. They can defend, they move the ball well, they shoot the 3 incredibly well. We've seen an ascension from Jordan Poole. Damian Lee is, playing really well. Gary Payton II is amazing, and Stephen Curry. We ain't even got to say nothing else about Stephen Curry. So it'll be interesting to see what happens when Klay and Wiseman return to the lineup, and I will be looking forward to seeing what happens. So let's transition a little bit. Just want to talk about a few things, not necessarily a segment or anything like that, but I just want to talk about a few things that are coming up. So tonight we have this won't be one of my marquee matchups, but a game I just want to highlight because it's going to be, I think, a pretty big one. I think it's going to be a really good one. Tonight on TNT, you're listening to this on Tuesday. Tonight, TNT, 9 p.m. Central Time. The Warriors and the Suns will be playing in Phoenix. These are the 2 best teams so far with the best record in the NBA. They will be taking each other on in the game tonight. So this should be the game to watch for the entire week. Like I said, you got 2 Western Conference powerhouses. The 2 best teams in the league based off record. Golden State, 18-2. They have won 7 games in a row. They are surging. The Phoenix Suns started out the season 1-3. They are now 17-3. They have won 16 games in a row and have beaten some really, really good teams during this stretch. Just recently, they went to New York. They beat the New York Knicks and they beat the Brooklyn Nets pretty convincingly. They also play. Both teams also play each other again on Friday. So you basically got, kind of a back-to-back in terms of them playing each other in such a close span. I mean, they're in the same division, which makes sense. But they also play each other Friday at Golden State. So who's taking this game? I mean, this should be a good one. This is going to be a tough matchup, I would say. It should be pretty close across the board. I'm going to have to go for Tuesday's game, for tonight's game. I'm going to have to go with the Phoenix Suns. I think this win streak means more important to them than it does for Golden State to end the win streak, if that makes sense. So I think the streak continues. I think they make the streak 17 games and end up being 18-3 and then having the same record as the Golden State Warriors. The Warriors, I think, have probably, you got, Steph and Draymond still on the team, Klay on the bench and whatnot, and Andre Iguodala, who was there for their, their stretch of championship runs. But you got the Warriors probably learned their lesson of putting too much stock into the regular season. I mean, going 73-9 throughout the regular season and then losing in 7 games in the finals. So, like the Bulls said back in the 95-96 season, don't mean a thing without the ring. Don't matter if you win more than 70 games. If you don't cap it off with the championship, it doesn't really mean anything. So I don't think the Warriors, not that they won't care about this game. I think it should be a really good game. I'm expecting it to be a really good game. But I just don't think they'll put as much stock to try to go all out, pull all their schemes out against the Phoenix Suns. Because if these teams meet in the playoffs, you don't want to show all your hand. I am convinced to this day that Greg Popovich used to do that pretty frequently when they were with their championship runs over the past 20 years. But led by CP3, who is leading the assists category this year for the NBA, and Devin Booker, I would give Phoenix the slight edge tonight to win the game. I think Steph is going to Steph. I mean, he'll probably have 8, 9, 10 threes. He's already got, crazy stat, he's already got 100 3-pointers made for the season. We're only 20 games into the season. He's made 100 3-pointers. Like that, this brother has turned his sliders all the way up for 2K and is doing it in real life. It is insane. But I definitely, like I said, I give Phoenix a slight edge for tonight's game. Now, Friday's game back at, or not Oracle anymore, Chase Center now, could be a different story. I'm not giving my prediction as of yet, but should be a good game. Both games should be pretty good. But another thing that I want to talk about, the Milwaukee Bucks. I want to give a shout out, want to highlight them really quick. They are back on track after a slow start to the season. They are currently 13-8. Like I said, they struggled to start. They had some, they kind of had a little excuse. They had some injuries to Drew Holiday. They had some injuries to Chris Middleton as well, who are their, second and third best players. Chris Middleton probably being their second, Drew Holiday being their third, depending on how you look at it. I mean, Drew Holiday is a better defender, but that was kind of the culprit of them losing. Giannis was kind of out there, with the rest of, the remaining role players, which Grayson Allen has definitely improved as well. And, one of the league leaders in 3-point field goal percentage, which is pretty incredible. Shout out to Grayson Allen, Duke fan, you know that. But Giannis is back to doing his thing, basically, taking one dribble past half court, and he's already at the rim. They have won 7 games in a row, beating the Lakers and Nuggets during that 7-game stretch, and also beating some worse teams, like your Magics and teams like that. But some pretty solid wins over this past 7-game stretch. So I figured they would kind of bounce back once they started out slow and got their players back. I figured that definitely wasn't going to last. Now, the Milwaukee Bucks have also signed DeMarcus Cousins. That came out yesterday when you're listening to this, came out Monday. DeMarcus Boogie Cousins signs a 1-year deal with the Milwaukee Bucks. I don't think the financial terms have been released, but it is a 1-year deal. It's probably a veteran minimum deal if I'm not mistaken. Like I said, I didn't exactly check it, but I hope he balls out. I know he's probably trying to chase a ring, which, I mean, more power to you, do your thing. He was definitely one of those cases, him and Isaiah Thomas were in that boat where they missed the bag. They both got injured in contract seasons, and unfortunately no one is going to overpay for someone who is coming off a catastrophic injury. Ever since his Achilles tear to DeMarcus Cousins, he has never been the same. So I really hope this works out for him. I hope they get a deep playoff run and he plays well, because I definitely think DeMarcus Cousins still has, people forget, he was one of the best, probably top 3, top 4 big before he got injured a few years back. When him and Anthony Davis were playing together in New Orleans, he was definitely one of the better bigs in the league. You could have made the argument that he was the best big in the league. A lot of people forget he was like 28, like 12-5. Like that's how good he was before he had his Achilles injury. So best of luck to DeMarcus Cousins. I really hope that he is able to get back to a point where he can be productive again. But the last thing I kind of want to discuss my second favorite team in the NBA. Everybody knows I'm loyal to the Spurs, San Antonio, ride or die. But I do want to talk about the Boston Celtics out in the Eastern Conference. I basically want to talk about, what is wrong with them? What's going on, Boston? What is happening? I don't like what I'm seeing. They're just mediocre. They're just run of the mill. I think they're 11th in the Eastern Conference right now. I think they're 11-10 or something like that. Something, like I said, mediocre at best. They're very inconsistent. Some nights you're thinking man, they are playing like a contender. And then other nights they're playing like a pretender. I don't get it. I don't understand what's going on. They beat, the Los Angeles Lakers in a marquee matchup that I did pick for them to win. Just putting that out there. And that was LeBron's return in the Boston Garden, if I'm not mistaken. But they blew out Brooklyn. They got blown out by Brooklyn. We're not competitive at all. And they also lost to the San Antonio Spurs, which no shade to the Spurs, obviously. That's my team. But, you're arguably more talented than San Antonio is. So you probably shouldn't be losing to them. But with Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, Dennis Schroeder, they just should be better. They have the talent to be a contender in the Eastern Conference. I think I picked them either 4th or 5th for my way too early season predictions. But right now, I just don't see it. I don't see it at all. I'm not blaming Ime Udoka. I'm not blaming their coach. I don't feel as if these are all concerns that I also had when Brad Stevens was there about the inconsistency. So I don't know if it's the dynamic between Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum that I kind of talked about in an earlier episode. I don't know what it is. They have a solid team, but they just don't play up to expectations. So it's a long season. We got a long season ahead. We still got more than 60 some odd games to play, but hopefully they improve. Like I said, they should be a contender in the East. I am expecting more from them. Them being my second favorite team, my favorite Eastern Conference team, Boston, you need to do better. But ladies and gentlemen, that is all the show I have for you today. That is all the show I have for you folks. Thank you so much for listening and watching. As I always say, if you could do all the good things, if you could share, subscribe, tell your mama, tell your daddy, all that good stuff, I would greatly appreciate it. I will see you this coming Friday where we will talk about all good things on Friday. So thank you so much. Take care and have a wonderful rest of your week.
Yeah, I told him I'ma hit it out of stands. I deserve another 100 bands. I deserve another 100 fans. Told them this was always in the plans. I just did it cause they said I can. Blowing euros when I'm down in France. Labels asking how I build a brand. Told them put a check up in my hands. Still got time, no cap. Made a few checks, but they all in the raps. Had a few friends, but they stuck in the past. I don't even trip.